Sheriff Ivey loves God and he trusts God. If you have any doubt about it, just look at a patrol car and read on the back of it, "In God we trust." So as I invite Sheriff Ivey to the podium, I want you to listen not only to what he says, but listen to the heart of the man that's speaking. Hear how he loves God, how he loves his family, how he loves his extended BCSO family, and loves the people of Brevard County. So I give you Sheriff Ivey, my sheriff, my friend, my brother in Christ.
Thank you. So I told Roger before he went up, "You better make it good or I'm going to fire you." And then he reminded me that he works for free. And he thought he had me, and I said, "Imagine how bad that's going to look when you get fired from a job you do for free." I love you, Roger. Man, thank you for all you do to lead our chaplaincy and everything you do in friendship to me and to our deputies. So we appreciate you. So I know that many of you are still eating, and as you guys can probably tell from looking at me, I am not going to stand in the way of you eating. So go ahead and grab something to eat, and make sure you thank our team that's serving us today. I know the team here always does a great job for us. So please give them a big round of applause for. So probably everybody in this room at one point or another has had a chance to hear me speak. And if you have, you know you probably need to buckle up your seatbelt because it's about to get real in here. I am the most politically incorrect person you're ever going to meet in your life. I've learned that PC doesn't stand for politically correct in my life. It stands for protecting our country, protecting our citizens, probable cause, and professing Christ. So I'm going to, in the 2 hours I have, I'm going to try and share with you how God's impacted my life and put me in the place that I am. And I'm going to start by reminding everybody of our theme today. They that trust God in the way of duty shall find him a present help in their greatest dangers. I think all of us in this room can see our country is facing some of its greatest dangers right now. Our world is facing some of its greatest dangers. So as we stick with that theme, I'm going to talk about how I got here. And I'm going to start with this. You think God cares about what you want, but he doesn't. He cares about what he wants and what those others need. You see, I know that because I wanted to be the assistant special agent in charge of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in Miami at one point in my career. I went down and I took the process, came out number one on the board. On the way back home, I was trying to figure out how to tell Susan that we were moving to Miami. And I got a call that they picked the number 4 person on the list. I don't let things get me down, so I applied for a job in Jacksonville, my area where I was born and raised at, Green Cove Springs, with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement being the assistant special agent in charge up there. Came out number 1 on the oral board. Thought, oh man, I'm gonna get to move back to where my family originally was. They picked the number 7 guy on the list. So then applied again in Orlando, came out number 1 on the board. They picked the number 12 guy on the list. So I quickly realized I was doing it wrong. I needed to blow the oral review board, not score as high. But then something happened. I'd made an agreement with Joyce Dolly, who was my supervisor at the time. She was the regional director for FDLE, that if I didn't get that ASACS position in Orlando, she would put me over the Melbourne field office. And so here I came to Brevard County, which soon made me stop talking about Green Cove Springs being my home, because this became my home. God didn't care what I wanted. He really didn't. No more than he cares what Mike Cador wants. Be honest, Mike, I don't care what you want either. Just to make the point here. But God had a plan. And it's hard for us to imagine, as small as we are in our lives, that God's thinking about how he wants us to impact others. It's hard for us to imagine that God has this plan where he's going to put you in a position where you can invoke change and where you can help keep people safe and where you can help through the different charitable works that we do here in Brevard County, the hungry, the homeless, those in need in every capacity. I never imagined that. All I imagined was that I wanted to be the ASAC and eventually the director of a region and eventually the commissioner of FDLE. Well, let me tell you how sick and twisted God's plan is for you at times. Because while that was at one time my dream, there was another dream I'd had when I was much younger and earlier in my career, and that was to be sheriff. And so when the others didn't work out, I came over here, and I got an opportunity to start getting into this world. And what I found out is, man, I'm glad God had a plan for me. I'm glad God didn't listen to me. It's kind of like our command team. They don't listen either. But here's what I've learned. He put me right where I was supposed to be. He put me and others that stand on principles and foundation in our county and others around our state in the exact place they're supposed to be so that they can protect others. And it doesn't matter what your call to protection is. It's that he put you there so you can do it. And man, it gets challenging at times. It does. It gets challenging in every capacity. Roger talked about putting in God we trust on our vehicles. I knew from day one when I was blessed to be elected sheriff that we were going to put in God we trust on our vehicles. I knew from day one that I was going to get pushback from it. I also thrive on controversy, so I was ready. And I knew we would get it. And so we did our homework. We made sure that when we pulled the pin on that, it was going to go the right way. And as soon as we pulled the pin, here come the media, trying to just fan the flames, if you will. And then here come we're going to sue you. Okay, get in line. I get sued every day of my life. I'm still settling lawsuits from when Phil Williams and Jack Parker were sheriff. It'll be a long time before they get to mine, so we'll be good. But here they came. Those that either don't believe in God or just don't want you to have the right to believe in God. And they threatened to sue us and everything else. And we knew we were on solid ground. And when they interviewed me, I got in trouble with one person, my mom. Because during one of the interviews, I said, you got a better chance of me waking up thin in the morning than you do of me taking that off my cars. I immediately got a phone call from my mom saying, don't joke about Christ, don't, Wayne. I said, Mom, I wasn't joking about that. And why is it a joke that I might wake up thin in the morning? Why is that even a joke? But the reality of it is we knew what they were going to try and do. They were going to try and say that we were using taxpayers' dollars, separation of church and state, and everything else. Well, didn't work because it wasn't our first rodeo. So we'd gone to A.J. Hires and asked him would he make a donation to pay for all the graphics on our cars when we changed it over. And of course he did. So they couldn't hit us with that one. Then they tried to say, well, you can't use that motto. Really? Because it's on this badge. It's on every flag in the state of Florida. Every single place. So then, fast forward now, we get challenged again because I was doing swear-ins in Temple Baptist Church up in Mims. For those of you that don't know where Mims is, it's about 2.5 hours from here. So we're doing our swear-ins in Temple. And while I loved the aesthetics of it, it wasn't that we picked there so that we could say, look at us, we're in front of God. It was because in Titusville, it was one of the few places that had the capacity to seat us. That's all it was. So we got threatened to be sued because we were doing our swear-ins in front of the cross. We were doing our swear-ins in church with all sorts of things around us that promoted religion and God. So I called our legal advisor and I said, hey, I want you to draft a letter and tell these people they can jump out a window. She says, Sheriff, I know this organization. They constantly sue. They've sued the county and the school board here before. And if they sue you, they will win. There's case law that supports it. Well, the last thing I want to do is cost you and your taxpayer dollars and make a precedence of doing something wrong. So here's what we did. We moved, I got a hold of Billy Speck out at the Great Outdoors. We moved our swear-ins to the Great Outdoors. We have our chaplain come in and bless our troops, which is allowed by the Supreme Court. We also had a big giant banner. It goes from about where that piano is to this wall. It's got our badge all over it. It's got Brevard County Sheriff's Office. And right in the middle of the banner, in the biggest letters, is "In God We Trust." We sent them a picture and said, we like this venue better, don't you? It's about knowing how to win. And it's about knowing when you do the right thing, God's always going to make sure you win. So see, I've been blessed in my life. I was raised by a mom and dad that had us in church. Believe it or not, I used to sing in the choir. I'll do a little bit right now for you if you want. But here's the reality. My mom and dad didn't just teach us about religion. They taught us about right and wrong. They taught us that in the darkest times of your life, God will be there. And sadly, for me and probably everybody in this room, in the darkest time of your life is when for some reason we start to question God. And then as he pulls us through those dark times, we go back to just being okay. And we forget to apologize for ever doubting. I went through that with the loss of my father. 1997, lost my dad to cancer. And I did. I doubted it a little bit. And God hung in there with me and stuck with me and got me through the toughest time of my life. And then he put me on this path to where I am today. And I will tell you that where I am today is exactly where I've always supposed to have been and where I really should have always wanted to be. Because this is the greatest job on the planet. I mean, maybe being mayor of Cocoa is better, but I don't know. But other than that, this is it. So why am I here? And again, it's not just me. It's others that stand on the principles and the foundation of this great nation, those that stand on the principles and foundation of our faith in God. Because it's not just me that's on this path. It's all of us. And every elected leader, there are many of them in this room, regardless of what their role is, as long as they are coated in the armor of God, they'll do it right. Folks, we are about to face what I believe is some of the darkest times our world's ever faced. You look at the turmoil that's going on around this world. God's people being attacked in Israel, elsewhere. You look at what's happening. College campuses being closed down. not only by the protesters who have the absolute right, because that's part of our job, is to guarantee them the right to protest. But it's also to guarantee others the right to enjoy their lives and not be disrupted by those that are protesting. And you're looking at colleges being shut down. You're looking at them taking over buildings and everybody saying it's okay. It's not. No matter what your cause is, it's not okay to disrupt somebody else's life. So those of us in this role know that we took an oath. An oath to protect what I call the 3 C's, our citizens, our cops, and our Constitution. And that's why I'm on this path. That's why God put me here. He put me here in this role to stand strong, to never waver in my beliefs. My father taught me as a kid growing up that the only line drawn in the sand that matters, because we draw that line a lot. Oh, I dare you to step over that. My father taught me the only line in the sand that really matters is the one you draw behind you that represents how far you'll back up before sacrificing your beliefs and principles. God help me draw that line. Listen, it's easy to give in. And by all means, part of our world is finding compromise. But there are other things in this world that we cannot compromise on. So we have to draw that line behind us and say, I'm never going to back over that line. So when we look at how God shapes us and how he promises to stand strong to us as we are in the performance of our duties, we have to understand that God not only put us here to do that, he expects us to do that. He believes we are capable of doing that. Sometimes my wife says to me, is it that big a deal? Absolutely. Sometimes she says, you don't have to win everything. Yeah, I do. Oh, yeah, I do. I'm not getting a participation trophy, I can tell you that right now. Not ever in my life. But I can tell you this, I'm never going to lose with God on my team. That's right. Amen. Never. And even sometimes when we face these dark hours, I think we have to remember it's all part of a big plan. And then we have to look and see how we fit into that plan. Because, I talked earlier about God's little twisted jokes. When Governor DeSantis was first elected governor, he called me to Tallahassee. Sunday night, I get a phone call from his staff. Can you meet with the governor tomorrow at 2 o'clock? I'm like, I don't know, I got a lot going on. I might have to go buy groceries or something, I don't know. I said, absolutely, I'll be there. What does he want to talk about? They said he wants to talk about the transition of FDLE. I said, perfect. So I set up, creating transition notes, what I thought the next commissioner of FDLE should do. I get up there, it's him and the lieutenant governor. I'm going to say about an hour and a half, they talked to me about what I would do if I was a commissioner of FDLE and what FDLE needed to become and do and get back to and everything else. And then the governor said, I've heard enough. The lieutenant governor said, I was ready 30 minutes ago. I'm like, man, I must have bored them pretty bad. He said, Sheriff, I need you to put together a list of what you're going to do in the first 100 days as the commissioner of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. I'm not that bright. Because I literally looked at him, I said, Governor, are you offering me the commissioner of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement? And he said, yeah, why'd you think you were here? I said, not that. I said, they told me you wanted to talk about the transition. He said, yeah, the transition to you being the commissioner. That was a job I dreamed of. It was a job I literally could imagine myself doing, but never imagined I'd get the opportunity to do. And you know what? Instead of going with my plan, I decided to stick with God's plan. And I turned him down because I know where I'm supposed to be. I'm in a community that loves its law enforcement officers like no place I've ever worked in my entire life. I'm in a community that loves us, trusts us, and protects us just as much as we love, trust, and protect you. And it's not just the sheriff's office. It's those that wear blue, black, whatever color uniform they wear. I'm in a community that partners with us to do the things we do. I'm in a community that draws this crowd for a prayer breakfast. So instead of going with what was originally my plan, I stuck with God's plan. And now, I'm so thankful I did, because I believe we are facing some tough times, folks. I believe we are going to have to roll up our sleeves. We are going to have to stand shoulder to shoulder and put our political differences aside. And we're going to have to remember that it doesn't matter how you vote in the booth. It matters how you carry God in your heart, because that's what it's going to take. That's what it's going to take to win this. So as you leave here today, I want you to sit in your car for a minute. If you don't have a driver's license, I want you to sit there for a lot longer. But as you leave today, I want you to sit in your car for a minute, and I want you to think about two things. What was your plan? What was it that you dreamed of doing? And then what was God's plan? And if those two are the same thing, well, that's awesome. But if they're not, then I want you to get busy doing what God wants you to do. Standing strong. Professing to people your belief and your faith. There are those that will say, as elected leaders, we're not supposed to talk about faith. Sue me. I don't care. Worst case scenario, I go work for Mike over at Cocoa. But here's the reality of it. Start doing what God directed you and prepared you to do. Because when I started looking over my resume as I prepared to run for sheriff, and I started putting it together, God had me work. I didn't ask for him. I didn't say I want to work here and I want to work here and I want to work here. But throughout my career, God had me work in almost every aspect of law enforcement, so that when the time came to do the job he was recruiting me to do, I'd know how to do it. And then all he had to do was add in, don't back down. Don't be afraid, because I am with you. And don't ever lose faith in me again. That's what we should all be promoting out there. We do a great job of marketing our businesses and on social media and everything else, but the reality of it is, how often do you market that you're a Christian? How often do you market that God is the reason for your success? How often do you market that God is the reason you have an incredible family and an incredible community? So as you leave here today, sit in that car, think about what God planned for you. Draw that line in the sand behind you. Don't ever back down. Stand on your principles. Be willing to work with others. This man right over here taught me a great lesson, and I love Mike Blake. Mainly because when he's around, I'm not the biggest guy in the room. But Mike Blake said something one time, and Mike, I'm going to quote it, and I'm going to give you credit for it, and then the next time I'm going to steal it. But Mike Blake said there's all sorts of ships in the ocean. There's battleships, cargo ships, cruise ships. In our community, we even have spaceships. But nothing calms rough seas like relationships, partnerships, and friendships. Have your relationship in God. Have a partnership with God. And then have a friendship with God. And spread those three throughout this community, and we'll be even greater than we already are. Because I think Brevard County is the most incredible place to live, to raise your family, and to celebrate God with others. Have a great day, everybody.